Zimbabwe's new president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, officially took office on Sunday. He plans to make the country a middle-income economy by 2030. Ahead of the Beijing summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, CGTN spoke with the Zimbabwean ambassador to China, who shared his thoughts on how Zimbabwe can merge its development plans with the Cooperation Forum mechanism.
The Zimbabwean president said that what's most important for the country is to develop its economy and make it a middle-income country by 2030. So what do you think that we need to do to achieve that target?
We have a lot of resources, starting with our human resources. We have, and I say this with humility, I am not boasting, but the Zimbabwean people are very blessed and very intelligent, very skilled and very trainable. We have a lot of natural resources. In terms of mining, Zimbabwe is a very big country. We are comparable to countries like Australia, Canada, Brazil. In terms of our natural resources, we have more than 60 different kinds of minerals, and some of them we are the #1 reserve holder in the world.
And is the China-Africa Cooperation Forum mechanism able to help, and how?
The China-Africa Cooperation is already helping. When in 2010 the first ministerial meeting took place in Beijing, trade between China and Africa was less than $10 billion. Today, since 2009 until now, China is the biggest trading partner for the whole of Africa. At one point, the figure was $220 billion. China has good relations with almost the entire African continent. The FOCAC has presented a broad platform for many things, cooperation in agriculture, aviation, infrastructure, trade and investment.
And what do you expect from the upcoming Beijing summit, and what are the challenges, and what would you suggest to do to face those challenges?
The challenge for Africa and China is at the level of the people. The leader has given us the direction. We must work to fulfill that direction in the area of investment, in the area of trade, in the area of people-to-people cultural exchanges, peace and security, health, cooperation, education, human resources, mining, agriculture, name it. And it can be done, because we have done that before.
Well, let's get you more on the expected outcomes of the FOCAC summit. I'm joined by Dr Cobus Van Staden from Johannesburg. Dr Staden is a senior researcher in the China-Africa Governance and Foreign Policy Programme at the South African Institute of International Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr Staden. What should the continent expect to get out of the summit?
I think the continent can probably expect increased cooperation with China. I think a lot of that will take place under the Belt and Road Initiative. There seems to be indications that the Belt and Road Initiative will probably be enlarged to include more of Africa, and it is clearly the centerpiece of Chinese foreign policy at the moment. So I think that will open up a lot of extra opportunities for the continent for additional cooperation.
Okay, so that's going to be a big focus, obviously, the Belt and Road Initiative. What do you see as the priority areas and the direction of the China-Africa cooperation in the next 3 years?
I think some of the key priorities will be an expansion of the relationship, a broadening of the relationship to include more areas. I think both Africa and China are interested in cooperating across a wider range of issues. For Africa, on the African side, industrialization is very important. And I think especially countries like South Africa and Ethiopia are going to be pushing very hard for additional help from China for the boosting of African industrialization, and possibly even for the offshoring of some Chinese industries to Africa.
And what are your thoughts on the evolution of the partnership between China and Africa since FOCAC began in 2000?
The relationship has grown a lot. It's broadened, and it's moved on to from extraction, which I think was one of the early big kind of meeting points for China and Africa. There was China had lots of minerals to sell, and Africa had lots of minerals to sell, and China wanted to buy a lot of them, and that was the basis for the early part of the relationship. I think since then it's broadened a lot. There's a lot of political cooperation, there's peacekeeping, there's a lot of trade and investment. I expect that relationship to continue to broaden, while at the same time I think there will also be moments where Africa might want to redefine the relationship to meet some of its newer needs.
You were mentioning the Belt and Road Initiative as being one of the top subjects on the agenda. It's expected to be among the top items, as we say. What would Africa's role be in this, and how does the continent stand to benefit, would you say?
The continent stands to benefit through having, in the first place, through having infrastructure and value chains and trade networks strengthened. That strengthening will facilitate access to China. It will facilitate the flow back and forth of goods and services between China and Africa. But it could also facilitate the flow between Africa and other parts of the world along the Belt and Road route. That includes Europe, South Asia, and the Middle East. So the routes that China is using to connect itself to Europe and the Middle East will also connect Africa to those places. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for Africa there, but I think there's also some issues that Africa needs to face in order to maximize the Belt and Road Initiative, and the biggest one of that is debt sustainability.
Okay, thank you very much for your analysis. That was Dr. Cobus Van Staden there from Johannesburg.